Welcome to the Food Code. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
It is Wednesday and we are talking about food labels and how to better approach the grocery store. Because I think that I've actually become, and Liz and I have not always known a lot and known all the stuff that we talk about. And the more and more I learn, the more and more I've become aware, which I think has been so helpful. Like I was at the grocery store last week and I was comparing pesto sauces because we made like a basil pesto, cauliflower gnocchi and chicken and Brussels sprout dish, and just looking at the types of oils that things use. And the thing that sucks, the good food's more expensive. It is
way more.
Like it was $2 more to get the basil pesto with olive oil versus vegetable oil or canola oil. But at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, but this is important to me. And I cook most of our food. So when I do buy these things, we use a ton of olive oil. We use a ton of spray when we cook. And so Chosen Foods actually has a great combo of avocado oil, organic canola oil, and then coconut oil spray. So good for high heats because olive oil does not do well with high heat. So, but yeah, I'm just knowing helps you make better decisions.
Yes.
Which is what our goal is for you guys.
Yeah. And I'm excited to talk about some of the things on here too, just because living a gluten-free life, it's really hard in the beginning because you don't know exactly what to look for. This is a conversation I've had with a few of my clients who are going through some healing protocols for having Hashimoto's and autoimmune conditions. And it's not necessarily always out there glaring in terms of what all you need to look for on a nutrition label, especially if it's not labeled gluten-free. A lot of things in the store are labeled gluten-free now. I believe that a few years ago, they put out kind of a FDA regulation that if it was gluten-free, it needed to be, labeled with the little GF on it. But other things that you would think are gluten-free that are not gluten-free, like what do you look at on the label? How do you identify this stuff? And I'll never forget just when I started really looking at food labels for gluten, we were at the grocery store and Art and I were cracking up because the chicken and the turkey and all of the meat proteins were labeled gluten-free. Like when that regulation came out, they had little tags and we're like, why would this have gluten in it? It's chicken. You know what I mean? But in terms of other things, as we've been learning more and more about the polyunsaturated fats and pro-inflammatory oils, it's in everything. I mean, the sunflower oil that I've seen, safflower oil, all of these different products. And Courtney, when she was in town, we ran over to Meijer together and we're reading through all of these healthy, options, and none of them were healthy. The only two that we found is Chosen Foods and Primal Kitchen that are actually made with avocado oil or olive oil. And so, yeah, it's more expensive. I think those dressings are $5 or $6, but in the grand scheme of things, you're going to use that oil or that dressing for multiple meals.
Totally.
Because I'm not dousing my salads with it. I'll just drizzle it on. That's enough for me. So it's definitely worth it. And one thing that Becca and I have talked about just offline is we're more aware, even when we go out to eat. I definitely feel, even when I have something like Brussels sprouts and, it's made with different oils and not a high quality bacon, I do feel a little bit more inflamed from it. Yeah. And also because I'm just a little bit sensitive to Brussels sprouts, but I've found that
doing them shaved helps more. With the basil pesto chicken thing that we made last night, I shaved down the Brussels sprouts, which helps because it breaks them down.
I just have to cook mine really, really, really well. But I do like the shaved one. Trader Joe's has a really good shaved Brussels sprout kit. So I'm excited to share this with you guys today. And we have to just remember, the food companies, they're manipulative.
They are not on our side, guys. They are not on our side.
Because they're making money off our disease.
Oh my gosh, so much money. You guys, here's the thing. Food, beverage, and restaurant companies spend almost $14 billion per year on advertising in the United States. Food is also addictive, extremely addictive. It's meant to be. I mean, how else would they make money on it? And that is why, and I'm not going to get too much on a soapbox, you guys, but this is why drug companies are some of the highest profiting companies in the world. Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, these companies are among the top 100 companies in the world that are in terms of their profit levels. And so, yes, I think that there is large benefit to certain medications and where the development of medicine has gone. But at the end of the day, we have, there is no money in being healthy. there is no money in growing fruits and vegetables in a sustainable way and without pests. We have to understand that we are in a large fight. We are the underdogs. We need to fight for our health because no one is on our side other than ourselves. And so just some facts that we want to share. Per the U.S. Food and Drug Administration around regulation of labels, food manufacturers are required to list all ingredients in a food on its nutrition label, abiding by the following rules and regulations. Okay. Ingredients must be listed in descending order, with those in the greatest amount listed first, which makes sense. Like if you see something, and this is always what I love about veggie sticks or things like that. You guys, there aren't even any vegetables in veggie sticks. I'm not going to lie. My kid loves veggie sticks. I buy them for him. But I know very well the first ingredient in that is not a vegetable. It is a type of flour or some type of oil. The names of any FDA approved color additives, such as blue number 1 or yellow number 5, must be included on the label. We'll get to those color additives in a minute. Certain ingredients can be listed collectively under umbrella terms like spices or flavors or artificial flavoring or artificial colors. Those colors exempt from the FDA approval. This is where it becomes problematic for people with allergies or, gluten intolerances or nightshades or anything like that have issues with certain peppers, because they might not list chili powder or cayenne or things like that can be issues. They'll just list spices. This is also an issue when you have xanthan gum or guar gum. They put xanthan gum, but they don't say what was held in creating the xanthan gum, which sometimes is a intolerance food for people: gluten, soy, dairy, corn. So these umbrella terms can become an issue for a lot of people. And then if a food, other than certain egg products, alcohol, poultry, and most meats, contains one of the 8 major food allergens, which include milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, and soybeans, it must be included on the label. If a collective color, flavor, or spice contains an allergic ingredient, that ingredient should be listed separately.
Yeah. And so one of the ways that you can start to look at this on the nutrition label under the ingredients, you will typically see that it's in bold and it will say contains, and then it would list soy, wheat, eggs, those top allergens. Sometimes it's in a little square box, but usually it's just bolded. But here's the thing that we need to understand in terms of gluten. So some things are labeled gluten-free. And if it claims that it is certified gluten-free, then it's most likely safe to eat, as the FDA only allows packaged foods with less than 20 ppm of gluten to be labeled as gluten-free. Okay. But you still want to check the ingredients list, because it's also important to understand that wheat-free does not mean gluten-free. And this is where we see a lot of cross-contamination. We have a few clients that, didn't realize it was in certain marinades or things that they were using, and they reacted to that and got a really bad upset stomach and diarrhea. So we need to check the allergen listing. So again, it is required that those top 8 allergens are marked on the nutrition label underneath the ingredients, but barley and rye are not in the top 8. And so you need to check for that in the actual ingredients list, because they're hidden sources of gluten. So obvious gluten ingredients that you can look out for would be wheat, barley, rye, malt, brewer's yeast, and then oats. And we actually had a client ask us about this today, because it's good to, have the knowledge and education and understanding around the certified gluten-free oats. So there can still be some cross-contamination, and these grains can still be problematic for some individuals who are struggling with gut issues, digestive issues. And so what I recommend is that you're getting off of oatmeal entirely, and you're switching more into a buckwheat, a natural grain, or a cereal that is not cross-contaminated, because it's, even though buckwheat, the name has wheat in it, it's naturally gluten-free.
Yeah.
So
we ideally want to buy foods without labels. An apple is an apple. Lettuce is lettuce. They don't have an ingredients list. But when we do look at an ingredients list or a food label, what we usually recommend people look at are really just a couple of things. I don't think that they're extremely helpful. Otherwise, I think that more knowing what ingredients are in the food is helpful. But for a nutrition label, what we usually say to look at is obviously the serving size, because the serving size is usually deceiving. Most serving sizes are much smaller than what is considered a serving size. I just remember back to, there was, it was a certain stand-up comedian. His name was Brian something, but he always talked about Fig Newton serving sizes. He's like, who eats 2 Fig Newtons? I'm eating Fig Newtons by the sleeve, just like a wood chopper, like chomping down on them. And it always cracks me up because he was so funny. But basically, serving sizes are usually not indicative of how much people are consuming. I think of cereal as like the main one. So most cereal serving sizes are about 30 to 40 grams worth on like a food scale, which probably only fills up about a fourth to a third of a cup. Like if you were to use a serving cup. Most people in a bowl, like if you were to fill up a cereal bowl, it's probably 3 to 4 times that serving size, which is getting close to like 500 calories. So we recommend weighing and measuring most of your food if you've never done so. It can be very eye-opening. The other thing I look at is calories. Calories per serving are listed. And although calories are important, also keep in mind, we've talked about this before, there is an error that is allowed in the FDA. You basically have like 20% give or take, less or more is okay, according to the FDA, when they measure like how many calories are in a food. So something that labels 150 calories could be 130, could be 180. There is no like really like red flag when it's within 20%. So we also want to know that calories are not everything because we don't absorb all of the calories that we consume. We've talked about this before with the thermic effect of food. Protein, you actually break down and absorb that protein and burn a lot more calories doing so than you do with carbs and fats. Fats are basically 0% is utilized in the breakdown. Protein, 10 to 20% of the calories you consume get broken down. And we also need to consider unhealthy guts because people with higher levels of bad bacteria in the gut actually absorb more calories from food. Research has shown this. So if you have an unhealthy gut, if you deal with IBS, bloating, digestive issues, constipation, stuff like that, you are actually absorbing more calories from food than people with healthy guts.
Yeah, because you're not breaking down, digesting, absorbing, and shuttling nutrients to be burned as energy. So this is where we see a lot of people with gut issues become malnourished, right? And we see all these vitamins and mineral deficiencies. So that is something else to consider. But the third thing that we always want to look out for is sugar. So you want to check for total sugar and added sugar. So if there's added sugar in something, it's going to tell you on a separate line that added sugar amount. And you really don't want added sugar into things. But kind of like we talked about a couple weeks ago when Becca was having the wheat thins, like there's added sugar to the wheat thins. Yep. Because they want to make it addictive because it's sweet, it's salty, it's crunchy. Like that's pretty much how they design food for us to become addicted to it. But added sugars are basically sugars that are not coming from whole food sources. So let's think about like your bananas, your berries, fruits, honey, agave, coconut sugar, all these naturally occurring sugars. Anything that is an added sugar is artificial, essentially. So we also need to understand what we're looking for here, right? If we're looking at a nutrition label and we're looking at the ingredients, you might see some of these other names that you wouldn't identify as sugar. So let's think here of a lot of things that end in OSE. This is probably one of the easiest ways to remember this, but sucrose, fructose, high fructose corn syrup, glucose syrup, dextrose, maltose. Those are just a few. There's actually, I think, over 182.
It's insane.
We did an article on this a while ago. I believe there's over 180 different types of artificial sugar. But then we look at rice syrup, which is a grain source. We look at barley malt syrup, which is another grain source. Cane juice, evaporated cane juice, corn syrup, maltol. All of these things are often added to our foods to make them taste better and also to make you addicted to them, as we've talked about. So let's talk about where are these hidden sugars and how do you identify them in certain foods. So spaghetti sauce is very common, canned corn, think about canned sweet corn, canned beans, yogurt. Yogurt is one of the highest in sugar.
Totally. And it's always so deceiving.
So deceiving. I remember one day I was running through Trader Joe's. It was pumpkin season. I had Marcus. Wasn't even paying attention. And
I'm so excited for pumpkin season.
Me too. We're basic. But I grabbed like the Greek yogurt, the Trader Joe's brand Greek yogurt pumpkin, because I used to love the Noosa and OSA.
Yeah.
Yep. I loved theirs. Their strawberry rhubarb and then the pumpkin, the seasonal one that they would come out with. I loved it. But got home and I looked at the sugar and it was 21 grams of sugar
oh my gosh.
in this Greek yogurt. And I threw it in the garbage can. I'm like, absolutely not. So be cautious because even again, some of these health foods, also nut butters, lots of sugar are found in nut butters. These health foods hide these things. Salad dressings, bread, canned soups, applesauce. Applesauce has a tremendous amount of sugar. I was reviewing somebody's food log a few weeks ago, and I was like, you have like 20 grams of carbs coming just from this applesauce. And there's like 16 or 17 added sugars to this. So we always recommend unsweetened applesauce. But again, looking at spice blends. You all know that there's certain spice blends that are a little bit sweeter. That's because they've added sugar to it.
Barbecue is often a very common one. Like a lot of barbecue spice blends have sugar in them.
Yep. And then we look at frozen foods and dinners. So when we think about this in terms of like how much sugar should I be consuming per day, it is very dependent upon where that sugar is coming from and how much fiber is present. But we would recommend in general that no more than about 10% of your total calories per day are coming from sugar. So an easy way to break this down is we classify it as 4 grams of like we would carbohydrates. So if you're eating a 2,000 calorie diet, you really don't want more than about, 200 calories divided by
40 to 50 grams of sugar a day.
50 grams of sugar.
Yeah. And if they're coming from whole foods, like that might be a little bit higher. But take a look at where they're coming from. We definitely want to look at that. Fiber is the other one that we look at. This is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to, especially if you have digestive issues. If you're constipated or the alternative of diarrhea, sometimes people have like a sweet spot with fiber, and everyone's is a little bit different. We say the higher the fiber, the better if you can tolerate it. But if you're consuming a carbohydrate-based food, crackers, bread, stuff like that, we recommend there should be about 4 grams of fiber per 20 grams of carbohydrates. A good daily fiber goal is about 25 to 35 grams per day for females, 40 plus for males. Again, this is going to be dependent on how many calories overall you're eating. And this will vary dependent on person, healthy gut, unhealthy gut, what stage that is in, what type of diet they're following, stuff like that. But digestion should remain in a good place. And if it's not, potentially supplement temporarily, like if you're doing a low carb situation, stuff like that. But we want most of our food to be whole food based that's providing the fiber. Added fibers, we do not love. Like they cause more issues than good from what we've seen. Like a big one we always talk about is Quest bars have a ton of added fiber. I think it's like 8 or 9 grams of added fiber. They wreak havoc on my gut whenever I eat them. We have a lot of clients that experience the same thing. So added fiber, we do not love. We do not love Miralax or any of the fiber supplements. They do not act the same within the body, which I think is going to be another podcast in the near future.
For sure. Yeah. I was explaining to somebody the other day, like it doesn't sweep the digestive tract the way that natural fibers do. And that's what we really want fiber for, because it helps excrete all of these toxins, excess sugars, excess cholesterol, bad bacteria, things like that. So, lastly, as we kind of keep going on here, the number one thing that we look for in terms of like the overall ingredients is a big question. Like, what ingredients should I be avoiding? What should I look out for? And so as we mentioned, ingredients are listed in descending order, meaning that the first ingredient makes up the majority of the food. Okay. So there's a couple of rules that you can live by here. One of my rules is that I'm not really consuming many products if I can't fucking pronounce what's on the label, because that tells me it's pretty much all chemicals and things that my body is not naturally designed.
There are for sure some preservatives and stuff that are like, okay, but if most of the ingredients are not real foods, or just steer clear.
Yeah. So a good way to kind of think about this is like a 2-line rule. Like, don't buy things that have longer than 2 lines of ingredients. And this is where, when we review certain shakes that we've had clients present to us, like Isagenix, I believe, is one of the worst that I've seen. It's like a laundry list.
And it's usually a bunch of added vitamins and like, you guys, they aren't the same. Like you don't absorb and digest them the same. And a lot of times you just pee them out. Like it's it's just a problem.
Yeah. So even like this is a great time to talk about like the protein shakes. People ask us like, well, how many carbs should my protein have? How many sugars? Like your protein shake or your protein powder, if you're using it as a supplement, not as a meal replacement, then it should just be protein. Like I believe
that's why I love Top Notch.
I was going to say
it's like 6 ingredients,
clean, and it's stevia. So there's no artificial shit in it. It's got some digestive enzymes in there to help people who are intolerant to lactose break that down. But yes, it should be very, very clean, and no carbs should be coming from it. It's like 2, maybe 3 grams of carbs per protein shake. If you want to make a meal replacement with that, then you can do so by adding 1 ingredient whole foods, fruits, vegetables, chia seeds, flax seeds, Greek yogurt, avocado, things like that. But then the other thing we would say when you're reading ingredients, the first 3 ingredients, you want to make sure that they are whole foods that you can understand, you can pronounce, right? And that do not include refined grains, sugar, or seed oils.
Yeah, this is usually where like I notice the most. Vegetable oil is almost always one of the first 3 ingredients in like processed foods, bag, like chips, stuff like that. We didn't really mention a whole lot about like the sodium on food labels or vitamins, nutrients that are on labels. And this is pretty much because there are more important things to consider when picking out our foods. On top of what we've already discussed, we want to talk about like, these are things to consider outside of the, nutrition label per se. We have to be careful of how foods get labeled because they are tricky. Like food companies know how to market people, and it is very apparent in what gets bought and what seems to be like, we talked to so many people that are like, well, I thought it was healthy because it had this on the label. Like it said it was low sugar free or like
vegan.
Yeah. And so we want to go through a lot of those. I would say try to buy organic when possible. If you can afford it, we always recommend, if anything, meat and dairy. Red meat and dairy is where you want to spend your money on. And this is something I've kind of shifted. I used to just like try and be budget friendly. But I have found huge differences, and just from research and what we continue to learn, like especially red meat and how cows are raised plays a huge role in what then goes into the body. And then dairy, obviously the same.
Full fat organic
as much as possible. Yeah. So we also need to know that like processed foods organic doesn't make a difference. Like just because it is organic cereal doesn't mean that it's better. Like for example, Cascadian Farm Organic Cinnamon Crunch cereal was one that I found has 11 grams of added sugar per serving. The first 4 ingredients are wheat, sugar, rice flour, sunflower oil. So like basically no nutrition there. They are just organic sugar, organic wheat, organic rice flour. Like it doesn't make them that much better for the body. So.
And they're just advertising it as fortified because they're painting on the vitamins and minerals, which your body does not utilize, as Becca was saying before. We've talked about that in other podcasts. My number 1 rule is you really should let's make this easy and dumb it down. You should be shopping the perimeter of the grocery store.
Yes.
Majority of your food. So let's say if your goal is to be eating 80 to 90%, if not, more than that, 1 ingredient whole foods, shop the perimeter of the grocery store. It's all of these things that we're talking about that are in the aisles, that are shelf stable. Yep. So when I go to the grocery store, I start in the salad section. We've got fruits, vegetables. Then I hit the deli, meat, or the, poultry section. Obviously, if
eggs,
eggs,
like that.
Yogurt,
milk.
Cheese.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you can build your meals with these things, but then if you're going into these aisles, like be on the lookout for some of these ingredients that we're going to be talking about, because everything is not as it seems. No. When we cannot trust the labels, the marketing is too good to be true in some of these situations. So watch out, in terms of like, if you're going to be buying like crackers, because we do talk about like Becca loves cheese and crackers, things like that. Like
I do.
Low sodium typically means that they've added something else, such as, sugar, or they've added other ingredients to keep that sodium out, other preservatives, essentially, because sodium's a preservative.
Yep.
Low fat, again, usually means added sugar, as she just talked about with dairy products, yogurt, milk. When it says something like made with, doesn't mean that it doesn't also have other ingredients in it. So we've talked about this in, our podcast a long time ago. I remember when the vegan butter came out.
Yep.
And then they had one that was avocado oil. So it says made with avocado oil. So they were marketing it, I think it was 80 cents, maybe a little bit
Smart
more.
Balance.
Could be.
Yep.
But so it's like that white and green, it's got the green leaf.
Yep.
If you flip it over and you turn it around, yes, it had avocado oil in it, but guess what was listed before it? Canola oil.
Because avocado oil is expensive.
Right.
And it's more expensive to have. And they do this with salad dressings too, like made with olive oil. And it's like, not a lot of salad dressings are made with olive oil. They're usually vegetable oil or canola oil because they're cheaper to put together. And so I saw one that was made with olive oil and I was like, oh, really? Look at the back. Still had vegetable oil in it. Mm-hmm. It's just olive oil was part of it. Mm-hmm. High protein is another one. And this is more where we see with bars and people get duped. Like, high protein, or protein bar, protein kind bar. We say a protein bar is a protein bar if it has 10 grams of protein or more per 100 calories. So if a bar is 200 calories, it should have 20 grams of protein in it. Like that is the bars that Liz and I recommend to clients are usually that case. Sugar free. If something is sugar free, it has fake sugars in it. Otherwise, it won't be listed as sugar-free. Like, it just won't. It's like I always say, like, vegetables don't say sugar-free on them, or like meat doesn't say sugar-free. It doesn't have any sugar in it. Like, if something is sugar-free, it is because they have tried to remove real sugar and add fake sugars to make it still sweet, but you think that it's healthier because it's sugar-free. We've talked about artificial sugars before and sugar alcohols. Sometimes these can be beneficial for people. Most of the time they aren't. Vegan. I always say Oreos are vegan. Enough said, guys. They are not healthier for you. And so, like, Liz was talking about the vegan butter. What you usually see is like Earth Balance is a blend of vegetable oils. And so it's got usually palm oil, canola oil, soybean, flax, and olive oil. Actual butter is so much better for you. Actual butter has vitamins in it, not a bunch of oils. And so please use real butter. And you guys, a lot of times, even I was actually posted this the other day about veganism. A lot of people do like almond milk or, cashew milk or something like that, and think that it is better. If you have a gut issue, if you have a dairy intolerance, absolutely, it is likely a better option for you. But how they farm almonds and like what it takes in terms of water and the expense to the environment for making a gallon of almond milk and what's included in it is far worse than you going and buying a gallon of whole grass-fed milk.
Have you ever made your own almond milk?
It's insane.
I've made it. I needed like 2 big things of almonds, and then like you do it I did it like the blender or whatever, but it was a huge amount of almonds just to get like a small amount of milk.
Yes.
So I definitely believe that.
And it usually has cane sugar added, like unsweet. They have unsweetened. It has different types of gums. It has lectins in it, absorbic acid. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that is not just like milk.
Yeah. So I can definitely see that. But in the situation where people are dairy intolerant, or they're trying to go through an autoimmune protocol, my favorite is actually coconut milk, unsweetened coconut milk.
I like oat milk too, but it's just high in carbs.
Yeah. I like oat milk now and then. I only really like it in like a latte. I couldn't do it like on Magic Spoon or like in a cereal. I do unsweetened.
It's very oaty.
Very oaty.
Very oaty. Yeah. Gluten-free, guys. Gluten-free can be harmful for the gut and our health, but just because it's gluten-free does not mean that it's healthy. And this is where I think people go wrong. Like, usually it's being replaced with something like rice flour, but rice flour is not very particularly nutritious. And gluten-free also says nothing about what else might be in the food. Like, for example, potato chips are usually gluten-free. Potato chips are not great for us. I think we can all agree on that. So understanding that, like, just because something is gluten-free, well, it was a gluten-free muffin. Well, Susie, that muffin still had 370 calories and it was 50 grams of carbs and sugar. And so, like, it's maybe not the best option, even though it was gluten-free.
Well, because they're adding more things to bind it and hold it together. And usually that is more fat. And usually when it is processed, it is trans fats. It's not good, healthy fats. So if you want to make gluten-free products, make them at home. Like, you can make a lot of different things with coconut flour, almond flour, things like that, gluten-free,
like
naturally
almond mills. Listen, I can't think of the name.
Totally blank.
Gosh,
Simple Mills.
That's
Simple
right.
Mills. I just ordered. So we had a private dinner this past Sunday, and we had this amazing artesian bread.
Yes.
So from Simple Mills, I ordered their artesian bread that's made from almond flour, coconut. I think there's like a blend, but it's going to be, gluten-free because that was really cool. And now I'm like super intrigued. I don't know if you saw my dinner last night, but I was like getting back into like my plating. I miss cooking. And I was just so inspired. Like, I was talking to the chef. I'm like, I just want to like come hang out with you for a day and like learn your skills.
I'm so bad at plating. It's not even funny.
I'm not really good at it either.
I try to take pictures of my food at night, and Nick's like, "Are you taking a picture of your dinner again?" And I was like, "Yeah, listen, like, people want to know what I'm eating."
Which is going to be another podcast that we're going to do.
Yes.
But anyway, so let's talk about some deal breakers or things that Becca and I really, really minimize. Or just, what I would say is I avoid these at all costs. I'm not going to go crazy. Like, if I'm on vacation and it's like, asking people,
we do our best.
Does your sauce have hydrogenated oils in it? I'm not consuming it. But
some of these are for sure hard nosed, but some of them are like, okay. I do what I can.
The reason why we're so strict about it is because I know the difference of when I am cooking and I'm using clean ingredients from when let's just say like you go on vacation and you're eating out more than you normally do, or you're just having to eat a little bit more processed foods for the convenience factor because you're traveling.
Yep.
Like I know the difference because I know what it feels like to eat
I get
really
so
clean.
swollen. It sucks.
Yeah, you can't get your rings off.
I can't get my rings off in the morning, which is happening at this point in pregnancy. And it is not enjoyable.
And it's been so freaking hot here.
It's been so hot. It's like I think people that don't live in Chicago don't understand that like 90 degrees in Chicago is not dry heat.
Yeah.
It is extremely humid. It is very just like I swell up like a freaking blowfish. It's unbelievable. But anyways, back to what we moderate or have hard passes on.
Yes. So,
Hydrogenated oils.
Yep. Or partially hydrogenated
Yep.
oils. So these are sources of pro-inflammatory trans fats. When I am looking at ingredients, as we talked about at the beginning of this, I will spend more money to have only the 4 to 5 healthy anti-inflammatory omega-3s. So for me, that looks like avocado oil, coconut oil, olive oil. I do the Kerrygold grass-fed butter, salted, not unsalted. And
I just got Amish butter and it's in this like big mound. It's like not like the nice sticks that you get from the grocery store because we bought it at a meat market. So it's like Wisconsin Amish butter. And Nick's like, I just feel like it's so much more real because it's not in like those perfectly formed sticks, but it's like literally this mound of butter that's actually kind of annoying to like cut and use. But it's delicious.
So do you keep it on the counter or do you keep it in the fridge?
I keep it in the fridge.
I have always kept it in the fridge.
It's ginormous. It's a pound of butter. Normally you get like a half a pound in like 4 sticks. This thing is a pound. So I keep it in the fridge just because like we're going to have it for a while.
Yeah.
So
I just remember growing up, I don't know if your mom ever did this. We had a butter dish and she always kept the butter sticks
I don't think
out.
that's right.
I don't think it's right
actually think that there's something wrong with that. I need to do more research because I'm pretty sure there's not something that's like something turns rancid.
Yeah. And you can tell because I distinctly remember like, so you know how with your avocado, it'll get like a little bit brown and then you cut that off and then it's green on the inside. That's how the butter would be. It would be
it
like
oxidizes.
orange-ish.
Yeah.
And then
there's something wrong with it. Don't do that, guys.
Yeah. I always keep it in the fridge.
Eggs though. Farm fresh eggs can be kept outside of the fridge for like up to a month.
Art was telling me in Russia, they keep them like 2-3 months sitting on the counter and it's fine.
Yep. Well,
I mean, it's not baking out in the
That's why
sun.
Russians are so resilient and hardcore. Okay. High fructose corn syrup. Not necessarily because it's handled much differently than other sugars, but it usually indicates like a non-nutritious food. When I see high fructose corn syrup, like I know that it's probably not something that's great for my body. So I try to avoid that. Added sugars, including hidden sources like syrups. Artificial colors. So we talked very briefly about this in the beginning, like FD and C blue, number 1. This is derived from coal tar. So they derive the food coloring from tar. So that I don't want in my body.
No.
Canned items not labeled BPA free.
BPAs are everywhere.
They're so everywhere. It's so overwhelming. But anyways, I try to find BPA free as much as possible. And then this is one that I really try: Atlantic or farmed salmon instead of wild caught. Like we've done a podcast before on organic, non-organic, all that kind of stuff. I really try to get wild caught fish as much as possible, not farm raised. Obviously at a restaurant, like there's not always an option, but that's another one. And like, we understand food shopping can be overwhelming. It can be confusing, but we want you guys to be informed. And at the end of the day, like we said, utilizing whole unprocessed foods makes this much easier. You don't have to read as many nutrition labels, but know that you are your best advocate. Like we cannot trust food companies to support us, to be on our side, to be rooting for our health. Like it's just not their job. Their job is to make money. I actually posted the other day, I was at a different store and I saw Smart Pop had Krispy Kreme flavored popcorn.
That kind of makes me throw up.
I'm like, why would you combine these two flavors? Popcorn is delicious. I love popcorn. I'm not the biggest fan of Krispy Kremes. Like I love my donuts, but I can pass on Krispy Kremes. They're a little bit too rich for me. But I just like, are you trying to get close to like caramel corn? Or
that's what I was thinking. Like I wonder what flavor they're trying to go after there. I think I've only had Krispy Kreme once or twice, and it was in the town that I went to college in. I don't really remember exactly what it tastes. I'm just like,
they're very rich.
Yeah.
Very rich. That you go in and get them warm is what you try and do.
Yeah.
Because they come right off the conveyor belt. But like,
They've got to be going after some kind of like icing or like birthday cake or like, I guess
I was just like, this is very strange to me. And that is that is the example of why I don't trust food companies. Like, what are you trying to trick my brain with?
Yeah. And so here's what I would say for all of you who are either feeling overwhelmed with this or you are not sure like where you should be looking for organic meats, like wild caught, grass fed. We're talking about, wild caught fish here as well. Butcher Box is one of my absolute favorites. You guys see me post it every month. The best day of the month, I think, besides a couple of the days of the month, is Butcher Box Delivery Day. And so if you go to the link in our show notes, we're actually affiliated with them. And they do different deals. Like right now they're doing like free lobster tails, and then you can sometimes get free bacon for life.
If you keep missing that one.
Yeah, I forwarded you the email twice.
I know. I just, every time I'm like, I should do this. I just canceled the Misfits because I liked it, but I kept getting like the berries that I was getting kept being smushed. And like,
it's hard. Like any of those like the meat all comes frozen. So that's really fine because I throw it in my freezer and then we'll eat off of it over the course of the month. And I actually broke it down in terms of cost per pound.
Oh, it's Misfits produce. The meat was so much better, so much cheaper and organic and grass fed, but they only have so many options.
Right. So like we do the $150 box per month. And then sometimes I'll go on because they have different member deals where you can add things on.
Okay.
But one day I just was curious because there's a really good grass-fed ribeye that we get from Mariano's, but every time we get it, it's like $55 because it's it's thick cut and they're big.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's enough for 2 meals.
Yeah.
Art obviously eats the whole thing. So it's like $55 just for 2. And if you think about like what it would cost if you went out to eat, okay, that's not bad. But I'm getting 8 ribeyes plus pork, plus chicken, plus bacon, plus other like random things that I kind of like swap out. Sometimes we'll do their pork chops, sometimes we'll do their ribs, which they have hands down the best ribs. And so for $150 a month, you break that down for grass-fed organic, you're paying like $5 to $7 less per pound than you would in a store like Whole Foods or Mariano's. Or find a butcher near you and share.
Yeah, we have Reams, which is like a really famous butcher out over by Elgin. But oh my God, the meat is so good. And believe it or not, guys, Costco, my sister-in-law works for Tyson. And she says that the Costco specs on meat are above and beyond every other company. And like, they're reasonable. They're very reasonable. So she's like, they always beat everyone out. Yeah. So if you need to know where to go get your meat and get good quality, those are our favorites. But hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you feel a little bit more informed and with, a couple more weapons in your toolbox when you go grocery shopping so that you can make the best decisions for you, your family, and your health.